So in this video, I would like to explain reflexive and possessive reflexive pronouns in Russian. Let's begin with the personal reflexive pronoun себя. This pronoun means self, as in myself, yourself, himself, and it's used when the pronoun is the same person or thing as the subject. This pronoun is affected by the 6 Russian cases, but has no gender or plurality, and its modifications are mainly borrowed and similar, so it's very simple to remember this pronoun. In the nominative, there is no modification, and therefore no pronoun. In the accusative and genitive, себя stays себя. In the dative and prepositional, себя changes to себе, and in the instrumental, it's собой. This reflexive pronoun doesn't have that many applications, so its examples are very simple and minimal, like in the following sentences. Я вижу себя. I see myself. Ты ставишь вещи около себя. You put things next to yourself. Он купил себе машину. He bought himself a car. Мы довольны собой. We are happy with ourselves. Они уверены в себе. They are confident in themselves. As I said, себя has no gender or plurality. Therefore, it can be used for any pronoun and subject. The only tough part is knowing in what case себя applies, so any pronoun can apply to any subject, unlike English, which has specific pronouns and plurality. If anything, this pronoun is more difficult in English than in Russian. Let's continue with possessive reflexive pronouns. Possessive reflexive pronouns in Russian are a bit more tricky because they're all affected by the 6 cases, have gender and plurality, and are used differently in Russian than in English. Regular possessives in Russian are a bit simpler, like мой, твой, его, ее, наш, ваш, and их, and I already made a video talking about possessive pronouns in Russian. What makes possessive reflexive pronouns different is that they talk about one's own by replacing normal possessive pronouns when they refer to any subject. In English, we can say his dog and Adam sees his dog. In the first phrase, his is a possessive pronoun because it answers whose dog? His dog. In the second sentence, his is more ambiguous because it can be used as a possessive pronoun or as a possessive determiner. As a possessive pronoun, his can refer to a different masculine subject, like maybe Adam sees John's dog, which can be said as Adam sees his dog. Using the normal possessive pronoun would indicate that the dog belongs to someone else. As a possessive determiner, his determines that the dog is in fact Adam's dog. Therefore, Adam sees his own dog. In these cases, English is more open because his has 2 meanings, either a possessive pronoun, someone else's dog, or a determiner, Adam's own dog. And the determiner is the possessive reflexive that Russian has. If you were to put these phrases in Russian, you would want to say его собака and Adam видит его собаку. This construction still works, but его would indicate a different masculine subject. As a reflexive, it's incorrect, because его would be a simple possessive. Just because English has the same word, it doesn't mean that Russian has the same word, because to indicate that Adam sees his own dog, we have to use the possessive reflexive pronoun свой. In this case, it will have to change based on the 6 cases, gender and plurality. That's why свой is a very tricky possessive reflexive pronoun to understand. So the best way to understand it is to think of it as a possessive determiner that indicates one's own, like my own, your own, his own, or any pronoun's own. Under the 6 cases, genders and plurality, свой will look like this, and I will give examples in every case. In the nominative, the pattern is свой, masculine one's own, своя, feminine one's own, своё, neuter one's own, and свои, plural one's own. The plural can apply to any gender. The underlined letters indicate that the emphasis is put on that letter, and the same goes for every other case. In the accusative, the pattern is свой, inanimate masculine, and своего, animate masculine, свою, feminine, своё, neuter, свои, inanimate plural, and своих, animate plural. Neuter and feminine objects are not affected in the accusative, whereas the masculine and plural are. In the genitive, the pattern is своего, masculine, своей, feminine, своего, neuter, and своих, plural. In the dative, the pattern is своему, masculine, своей, feminine, своему, neuter, and своим, plural. In the instrumental, the pattern is своим, masculine, своей, feminine, своим, neuter, and своими, plural. In the prepositional, the pattern is своем, masculine, своей, feminine, своем, neuter, and своих, plural. As you can see, the cases are not too difficult to remember because some cases borrow the same words from one another. Remember, these pronouns can apply to any pronoun, which is why one's own is the correct definition to give to these pronouns. Unlike normal possessives, possessive reflexive pronouns have a lot more to them, so they're not that specific. What they mean is one's own, or practically anyone's own, which is why they're more similar to determiners than to pronouns. Still, always remember that possessive reflexives can apply to any pronoun and any subject. The only tough part is to work with the cases, gendered nouns, and plurality. Here, we have свой in the nominative under every gender while also being plural. Свой дом, своя машина, свое здание, and свои машины. Let's not forget that the plural can apply to any gender, so in this case, I'm using the noun машина again. Also, none of the nouns change because the nominative is the dictionary form of nouns. And again, there are no definitive pronouns in these phrases because свой refers to one's own, so any pronoun or subject would work in this case. Here, we have свой in the accusative under every gender and plurality. Я вижу свой дом, ты видишь своего друга, он видит свою собаку, мы видим свое здание, вы видите свои машины, and они видят своих друзей. Don't forget that the accusative works with animate and inanimate objects. So in this case, some of the nouns change to fit the accusative. Also, the animate noun drug has an irregular conjugation in the plural which ends in zay, and it does that on purpose to make a better sound for an animate noun. In this context, I used every personal pronoun to show how свой fully works. And as you can see, it doesn't matter what pronoun we use because every sentence has the same word, only modified under the accusative. Here, we have свой in the genitive under every gender and plurality, and the genitive relates to possession, attribution, and absence. Я вышел из своего дома. Он вышел из своей машины. Ты вышел из своего здания. And они вышли из своих домов. The nouns also have to change to fit the genitive. But in this case, I'm using more advanced concepts like вышел and вышли, which are conjugated verbs from the perfective past. In this context, they make more sense, and we can tell they're perfective because of the prefixes at the beginning of the verbs. Here, we have свой in the dative under every gender and plurality, and the dative relates to direction. Я иду к своему дому. Ты идешь к своей машине. Он идет к своему зданию. And они идут к своим домам. The nouns also have to change to fit the dative. And in this context, I'm using the present tense, which is a bit simpler. Here, we have свой in the instrumental under every gender and plurality. And the instrumental works with an instrument. Я со своим другом. Ты со своей собакой. Он смотрит под своим окном, and мы за своими зданиями. Let's not forget that the instrumental has other functions, like the prepositions pod and za, which makes sense in this context. Also, the preposition se changes to so in the first two sentences, and it's a minor spelling rule. In this case, the nouns also change to fit the instrumental, which utilizes more advanced grammar. Finally, we have свой in the prepositional under every gender and plurality, and the prepositional works with prepositions. Я в своем доме, ты в своей машине, он в своем здании, and они в своих домах. The nouns also change to fit the prepositional. In conclusion, this is how reflexive and possessive reflexive pronouns work in Russian.